It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce a very close and dear friend for many years, Yehuda Kleiner, who is 83 years young. We are here in Renana in Israel. Tomorrow night is Yom HaShoah, where we commemorate what happened in the Holocaust and the Shoah. And we have a very special friend of mine. Yehuda is an outstanding philatelist. We've known many years. And Yehuda has a story which is absolutely unbelievable. Yehuda came to Israel as a small boy and left Germany, thank God, before the war in 1938. Mm-hmm. So Yehuda, over to you. I'm sure all our listeners out there are just fascinated to hear your journey, your story, and the miracle, thank God, that you came, that you left Germany in time.
Right, we did live in time, and the story is, I think, unusual.
Can I ask, to begin, Yehuda, which town or city were you born in?
Okay, this is what I wanted to tell you. I was born in 1934, and we lived in Breslau. Breslau is in the east of Germany, and after the war, it was, in a way, you can say, it was returned to Poland. Now it's Poland, and it's called Wrocław. But at the time, it was authentic German town. Now, my father was a physician of skin diseases and venereal diseases, and he had his practice in Breslau. And one day, in the beginning, I think it was in 1938, the police commander of that city came to him and he told him that, can you help me? I have syphilis. Wow. Now, at that time, before antibiotics, syphilis was more or less a dead certificate, if I may say so.
It was lethal.
It was lethal. It was lethal. And my father, as a venereal doctor, I don't know how he succeeded to
cure
in English to cure him. To cure him. After a while, this police commander joined the German Nazi Party and became a figure in the local SS. And one night, of course, I know these things from the story from my father, because I was a little boy and I didn't understand anything at the time. And he told my father, listen, tomorrow, in 2 or 3 days, it's the time that we take the Jewish physicians to concentration camps. The way they did it, they collected the Jews in Germany, they did it by professions. And they started with intelligentsia. Why? Because these people could arrange a defense, they could arrange a withdrawal or whatever. So there was a day for the physicians, and there was a day for the lawyers, and a day for the bankers, etc., etc.
And Yehuda, this was in 1938?
In 1938.
And how old were you at this time?
4.
You were 4 years old.
4. It was the beginning of 1940.
Do you have any recollections of... You were too young.
I have a recollection of the house we lived in, I think. I remember the street, Sprudelstraße.
Wow.
Anyway, and he suggested to my father, listen, I owe you because you cured me, but it's a big danger for me what I do to help you, but I still want to help you, and I suggest that you immediately leave Breslau and go somewhere else so that we don't take you, we don't find you. It's a day when we collect the local physicians or doctors.
The local Jewish.
The local Jewish, of course. Now, my father had a brother who lived in Berlin. He was called Marcel. This guy was an adventurer, and he was a communist. Now, as you probably know, that the Nazis also persecuted the communists, and to our luck, he was responsible for the flight or eviction of Communist Party members from Germany, so that they're not being caught by the Nazis. He, in a very short time, gave my father 2 forged Czechoslovakian passports, one for my father, one for my mother. And this was before Hitler entered into Czechoslovakia. So my father was clever to buy gold coins, and he had many gold coins with him, and we fled to Czechoslovakia. This I remember. We took a flat in Prague. Now, there's something funny.
How did you go to Czechoslovakia?
Yeah, we did go to Czechoslovakia.
By train or?
I don't remember how. I don't remember. Maybe by car or by train.
Okay.
Now, there was something which which amuses me that my father told me, because when we came to the Czech border and my father gave the forged Czechoslovakian passport, the local clerk at the border started to talk to him in Czech. And my father didn't understand the word. So the clerk asked him, well, I don't understand. You are a citizen of Czechoslovakia and you don't understand me? So my father wasn't confused. He took out a few golden coins, put it on the table and said to the clerk, this is my Czech language.
Wow.
And the clerk was very happy. He took it and he waved with his hand. You can enter.
So that kind of saved your life.
This saved our life. Now, what happens to these passports? After my parents died, and I inherited the passport, also some of the gold coins. I'll talk about this later. I have 2 daughters. And I gave each of my daughters 1 passport with a story, so they know. So they have the passports now.
Can I just ask, were you the only child, or you had?
Yes.
There were no brothers or sisters?
No, because my parents were already quite not old, but mature, but they were not young when they married. So I was the only child. Anyway, we stayed for a while in Prague, and my father somehow arranged to transfer money to Palestine and buy certificates from the British. But we had to reach Trieste, because the ships to Palestine, to Haifa, they went from Trieste. And there was a problem. How do we cross the borders from Czechoslovakia to Trieste?
Trieste is in northern Italy.
Northern Italy. So, and my father, he was by birth, he was an Austrian, and he knew Austria very well, and Austria has a border with Italy. So, what we did, my father, he had money with him. This is our luck. And he bought a car, and we went by car. At that time, this was before the war, so there was no problem to go from Czechoslovakia to Austria. But there was a problem to go from Austria to, already, for Jews, from Austria to Italy. So we crossed by foot the Alps, and I became very ill then. I nearly died. I became very ill, and
you were only 4 years old.
4 years old. I got a lung infection, and this is why I am recognized because of that. And I had a certificate that I was very, very ill as a Holocaust survivor, because of this little pass that we went through the Alps, and it was in the winter, it was cold, and my mother...
You showed me your card.
I showed you the card. You want to see it? I'm recognized by the finance ministry, and I get a small allocation as a Holocaust survivor, and I got medication free, which I need for my blood pressure.
And do you remember when you were in the Alps? Do you have any recollection of?
Yes, from the Alps, and how we went through.
Yehuda, if you could show to our viewers.
This is a card which is saying Holocaust survivor, number so and so, Yehuda Kleiner, issued by the government of Israel, by the Ministry of Finance, and by the Irgun, by the
organization,
by the Foundation of the Holocaust Survivors, something like that. And eventually we reached Trieste, and because we got certificates from the British, we came to Palestine in 1938. But the two more stories to add to it.
Do you remember going on the boat from Trieste to Vesperus?
I remember something, but not really. 4 years old. That is it's difficult. Sometimes things are coming back. When I think about it, and I think about my parents. Of course, they both died some time ago. But the two more stories which I want to tell about it. You see, we came to Israel. It was soon after that, 1939. The war started. We didn't know the language. It was not easy to integrate because we were considered to be Europeans or Germans, even Germans, you see, and I suffered because of that, because the local children didn't like me very much because of that, and my father did integrate very well. My mother never overcome the flight from Germany, and one of the things before she died that she told me. When she kept the gold coins, these were sovereigns, British gold coins, they're called sovereigns. Each coin today is worth about $350 to $400. And she gave me the coins, and she told me, listen, you'll be hungry, you will have nothing to wear, your wife will be miserable, you will have no place to sleep, where to sleep, but you'd never touch these coins, because one day you will need to run again and they will save you.
Wow.
The trauma of running from Germany, somehow she couldn't overcome it. It stayed with her. My father was no problem. The other story is one day I come back from school, and a huge woman is standing before the door at our flat in Tel Aviv. No, my father was working, my mother was working, so I had the key. There was no one, and I never saw such a huge woman. I'm joking. I mean, if you go behind her on the street, she covers the sun. And this is what she said. It saved her in Auschwitz because she was so strong. And I asked her, I saw the number on her arm. So I talked to her in German, and I asked her, who are you? And she said, well, I'm your aunt. My name is Marta. She was married to Marcel, the brother of my father, the one...
The communist.
The communist, the one who gave us the passports.
The Czech passports.
He was caught, and she was caught with him. And she was detained in Auschwitz. And because she contaminated the German blood, because she was a Goya, a German.
A non-Jew.
A non-Jew, that she married a Jew. And therefore they put her to Auschwitz. But I never forget that. During lunchtime, well, of course, I rang my father and I asked him, who is it and what? He said, no problem, I didn't know that she's coming very well, Marta. take her in, go to offer her if she wants to drink or to eat. Anyway, in the evening, during dinner, we are sitting on the balcony, I never forget that, and she took out from a small bundle maybe 8 or 10 or 12 crystallized salt items. Or crystallized salt, crystals of salt. And what was her story? She didn't say it was Mengele. She said that the Germans wanted to see how much a German pilot, which is shot down over the sea and he has no sweet water, how much can he survive by drinking salt water? Wow. So they forced her to drink salt water. And the crystals didn't resolve in her body. Didn't resolve. They stayed in her body. Luckily, this was somehow a short time before the Russians freed Auschwitz, and she was taken to an American hospital and she was operated and all the crystals were taken out of her body. And she came with a German Jew. She became somehow friendly with him, and she didn't really know where we are living in Israel, but he went to his family in Tel Aviv, and he started to ask, where is Dr. Kleiner living, Dr. Kleiner, and this is how she got our address and came. Eventually, my parents tried to help her, but there was not much to do with her. It was 1946. And she didn't know the language, she had no profession, she was an Aryan or a non-Jewish. So eventually she went back to Germany and she got a post as a housekeeper with some rich family there. And of course I didn't have any connection with her.
Did your parents still have a connection with her?
Yes, with letters. And that's it. Otherwise, the rest of the family, they all... You see, my father was an officer in the Austrian army in the First World War. And the German Jews, they fully integrated into German society, and they acquired the German culture. They didn't believe that anything would happen to them. And they stayed until it was too late. Not all of them. Some came.
Yehuda, can I ask, what happened to Marcel?
Oh yes, Marcel was caught, and I can't imagine what they did to him. A Jew, a communist, a smuggler of communists outside Germany.
Did you ever hear from him again?
No. But there is something else. Oh. הלו. בסדר, יש לי פה...
Yehuda, coming back to your father's brother Marcel, did your parents ever manage to find out what happened to him?
No. Even Martha didn't, his wife didn't know. They took him and he vanished.
And did Martha ever remarry?
Not that I know. Maybe. But there's something else that is worth telling, I think.
Did your family have, your parents, their siblings, did they remain in Breslau or in Germany?
What, my parents?
The immediate family, their brothers or sisters?
They remained in Germany. Some escaped to Russia, but I think that they died in the Russian camps, because the labor camps.
Conditions were very harsh.
The conditions were very hard, and they were physically not so fit. So it's sad because I was alone, no brothers, no sisters, and after my parents died, that's it.
So you have no relatives?
No. I mean, I have 2 daughters of my own and a wife, but that's it.
And your grandparents? Your grandparents remained in Germany?
Yes.
And
Yes.
they were also...
They were taken and,
killed.
yeah. This
Wow.
is sad. This is sad. Yeah.
So, thank God your father had the insight to
Yeah.
get the
I know
the
what I wanted,
certificates.
my father. After the war, some years, I think it might have been in the early 60s, my father went to Germany to find this guy who warned him. The German
his
SS or
his
the-
patient who he
yeah,
cured.
the patient, but he didn't find him. When he tried to through official people or through the municipality, whatever, they didn't cooperate. They didn't cooperate. My father thinks that you see, I know, it is known that the SS people or soldiers, especially officers, they had a tattoo, SS, here. And possibly if he served in Russia and the Russian caught him, I mean, there was no court-martial, poof, finish.
That's it.
An SS man. He probably was killed, I think. But my father wanted to thank him. But he never found him. So that's my story.
And did your mother go back with your father to Germany?
Yes, they went back to Germany. They got reparations, like all the Jews from Germany. And they got German passports. Also, I didn't want to get this passport, and I told my parents, listen, it's not. If I take the passport, I'm becoming the citizen of Germany. I don't want that. Okay. And the funny thing is that now I'm going on a mission together with about 5 pairs from the city of Ranana to our sister municipality, sister town or city in Germany on a mission. And we will be hosted by German families.
What is the name? What is the name of the municipality in Germany that you?
Pardon?
What is the name of the municipality in Germany?
Bramsche. It's. I understand it is some kilometers from Munich. It's not a big city.
And it's a joined city with Renana.
With Renana, it's a joint city with Renana. Yes. You see, I must admit. I mean, the Germans don't run away from the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I mean, they did. When I went to Germany the first time, I went to the platform 17 in Berlin, from where they took the Jews to the concentration camps, and there is a memorial there, and there are, of course, there are the iron plates near the houses where Jews lived, with the name of on the pavements where the Jews lived, and so it's. I'm asked. You see, I don't forgive them, and I never become really friends with them. But the present generations, they're not to blame.
Yeah, absolutely, it's true.
You see, and I understand that they're helping Israel also, the German government. not like the Poles now, the new the new law in
The new
Poland.
legislation.
Yeah.
Well, Yehuda, you've been a stamp collector for many years, and
No, letters.
letters, but
Letters.
postal history.
Postal.
And in November, we're having a joint. Germany's invited Israel to a joint national exhibition, and it will be amazing because, please God, you'll be exhibiting there.
Yeah.
So it's like a circle, a complete circle. But I just want to ask, and I'm sure our listeners would be very interested to find out, when you went to Germany, was it very difficult to go?
No, it was really interesting because I felt at home there, and I tried to understand it, and because our home in Israel, first in Palestine, then in Israel, was a German home. I mean, all the friends of my parents were German Jews.
Did you speak German?
Yes, we spoke German. We spoke German at home. The culture was German. I was educated with I had to read the classical German writers, like Schiller, like Goethe, and of course I was taken to concerts, Mozart, and others.
That's what makes it so difficult, because Germany was possibly the most cultural.
Yes, in Europe.
In Europe, and
right.
To have had such a devastation, such a total annihilation of from the most cultured people in Europe.
Right. This is my mother never overcome it. She never overcame it. She had the trauma for that.
It's a question that it's still. It's impossible to understand. Such a cultured nation with the greatest musicians and poets and writers could have performed the most despicable acts to try and annihilate the Jewish people. It's unfathomable. It's
but in a way, if you think about it, there is something which is fate, I think. I mean, Einstein and Oppenheimer, the two inventors of the atomic bomb, they were driven out from Germany. They lived in Germany. They were German Jews. Yeah. Now imagine if Hitler wouldn't drive them away because they were Jewish. The Germans would have had the atomic power, and they would rule the world today.
It's a different angle looking at history.
You see?
You've got a point. You've got a...
And it was and I came to think about it when Peres was talking to the German Reich, and he asked them, what did Hitler wanted with the Jews? I mean, there were so famous Jewish people in Germany who contributed to German culture and knowledge and science. Freud, Einstein, Rosa Luxemburg, who else? There were many others.
In other words, in all fields, in musicians,
in all fields. So, but maybe this is something. It's difficult to understand.
And if you look at the percentage of Jews compared to the German nation, it was a very low percentage. There weren't over 1 million German Jews. The percentage was much less. It was a couple of 100,000 out of a population of over 44 million.
Yeah. So
wow, but Yehuda, you've been through your journey. It's really, you are an example of Jewish history. Really, you epitomize what happened to our people. A survivor. Thank God your parents had the foresight, that they had the insight to see that they must leave, that they took their advice.
Yeah, my father saw it. My father saw it when the law came out that Jewish doctors are not allowed to practice and receive German Gentiles, patients. that came out, the law came out, I don't know, 1936, 1937. I think this is when he started to put money here in the bank in Palestine
When
in
he
order
realized, yeah.
to buy the certificates. He understood that this is the beginning of the end.
And it's actually quite sad to think that a piece of paper, certificate, that certificate to enter Palestine, that the British only issued very few of them,
Yeah.
saved you, and you sitting here today because of that certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And if there wouldn't have been the white paper and they would have allowed immigration,
Right.
so
Yeah, because they...
so many Jews would have survived, and we wouldn't have had the total
Yeah,
destruction.
because they had the Arab population here, which was against immigration.
But
And if you really read the Balfour Declaration, and you don't just take out what's convenient for you, what he said, what the declaration said, is that the British government favors the creation of a Jewish home in Palestine, but not harming the local, or something like that, harming or disturbing the local inhabitants of the land. So this is what we don't want to
I
hear.
know, but you know what the sad thing with the Balfour Declaration was, at a time when there were British, it was Lord Balfour, there was Lord George, there were Jan Smuts from South Africa, there were tremendous philo non-Jews, people that were very pro-Jewish, pro-Zionist as well.
Yeah,
And it was a time that, unfortunately today, just in the news today, the Labour Party here in Israel has broken off ties with the British Labour Party because of the leader of the Labour Party in England is so anti-Semitic. What's so sad about the Balfour Declaration is that they did nothing really to fulfill their promise of to help create a Jewish homeland.
yeah,
Very little. They actually
Very
went against that by issuing the white paper, thereby
Right.
not allowing, or very limited, extremely limited.
yeah. Because the Arab,
Immigration.
the interest in the Arab oil,
Yeah.
the Arab oil,
Yeah.
and the British, they didn't like the Jews so much. The funny thing is that the first money which I made as a boy was from British officers. Why? Because next to our home there was a tennis court in Weisel Street in Tel Aviv, where the British officers came to play, and I went there and became the bellboy. And I collected from the nets. I collected
The
the balls
balls.
and gave them, and they gave me tip. And this is the first money I ever made. I think it was I was 8 or 9 years old at the time.
So you are actually an example of, I mean, you've lived here before the state was established, when
Right.
the state was established.
Right.
Do you remember May 1948 when Ben Gurion declared,
Yes.
and you remember it well?
I remember that very well. What I most remember, I don't know if you know the story of the weapon ship Altalena.
Sure.
You know it.
If you could just mention it for our listeners, but
Anyway, all the kids from when the ship was shot by the Ben Gurion called it the holy cannon, and rightly, because there couldn't be another army in the army. I mean, you had to have one army. And I have two things I want to tell you. All the kids, like a flock of, I don't know, of locusts, we went to the ship, it was still burning, to take out weapons. And for many years I had with me, it was a Czech rifle, which was the wooden parts burned away. So I had the framework, the metal parts of the gun, of the rifle, and I kept it for many years as a souvenir.
you still have it?
No, because in one of I lost it some time when we went from one flat to another flat, etc., during our lifetime. It disappeared. But I will never forget the speech of Begin,
This was Menachem Begin.
of Menachem Begin. He was very theatrical, and his speech was fantastic about when the ship was burning, and the way he described the whole idea of bringing the weapons to Israel for the fight of independence and what has happened to it. And also there were some people on the ship, or soldiers, Etzel volunteers, who died.
Yeah.
That's a sad story. This I remember from 1948.
And you actually saw
1949.
the ship? You remember seeing it?
Yeah,
It was-
I went on the ship to take out the guns.
How close was it to the beachfront?
Oh, you could walk. You don't have to swim. It was marooned on into the sand.
So you heard, I'm going to just mention, and I think our listeners will be interested, in our Beit Knesset, in our synagogue in Beit Vegan, we had a bar mitzvah. It was a celebration, and in our shul, we had one of the people that came from America was originally on that ship.
Yeah.
But in our shul as well, we also had somebody that lived in my street in Rehov Uziel that was part of Ben Gurion's, the Palmach.
Palmach.
That was there shooting the ship. So we had in the same synagogue somebody who was on the ship and somebody who was shooting at the ship. And when I spoke to the person who was shooting at the ship, he really believed that it was a purge, that they had come to cause a coup d'etat, a coup. And that's till this very day. He felt that that ship was, they brought weapons to cause a coup d'etat.
Well, this I don't believe that.
And many people don't, but that's what he still believed. And I mentioned to him that no, I don't think. And he really, till he passed away, that was his belief, and that were justified. He felt they were justified in shooting the ship.
Well, I think that what Begin wanted, he wanted that they will call the Cherut underground, the underground of that, and the people who were on the ship and the weapons will be kept as special units, divided from the Israeli army under his command. This is what he wanted. But Ben Gurion didn't allow that. He said that there's going to be one army which is responsible to the government.
But I think
and this is why also the Palmach was taken. The Palmach also was taken out.
I think for our listeners, at this time when the Altalina came, the British they forbade the Jews to have arms, and they would go to the kibbutzim and they'd confiscate the arms, and it was very difficult because how were you going to protect yourself? And when there were riots, and the British were very strong and they were very determined to prohibit any Jewish defense force or underground movement.
Yeah,
so
I know.
It was a very complicated situation.
It was a very complicated, but it's probably the communists helped us. I mean, the Czechs.
Yeah, it was the Czechs that gave.
The Czechs sent weapons.
They sent weapons, and they sent the aeroplanes, which were sent in boxes, parts of the aeroplanes, and some of them were German aeroplanes.
Yes.
And that was the very first for the Israeli Air Force came from Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, because they wanted to have influence in the Middle East. I mean, the communists, it's the Russians, because the Russians ruled Czechoslovakia at the time. That is. But there were enough weapons, in all houses, in storehouses, in yards. I mean, they were concealed.
But I think the most important lesson that I learned was from the Altalina is the courageous Menachem Begin, who prevented a civil war.
Yes.
And they
Yes.
really could have
This he
happened a
did.
civil
This
war.
he said in his.
And he prevented a civil war.
Yes, this he did. He did say that he accepts in his fantastic speech. He accepts the sovereignty of the state and of Ben Gurion, and therefore he will not make a
Take
coup
revenge,
d'état or
or not take
whatever.
revenge, yeah.
Yeah.
And you remember the War of Independence and all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
all the wars. I mean, you've lived through momentous times in Jewish history.
Yeah.
You've lived through.
Yeah,
the
I was
Shoah,
14, 15 years of age then.
and you remember the hardships, and where there weren't food rations and
There was nothing here. Yeah, of course. You got You got 200 grams of meat for a family for a week or whatever. I mean, that's it. There was nothing here. And a lot of immigrants came. This is why. Remember, when the state was founded, there were only 600,000 Jews here. And luckily, the Arab leadership made the big mistake of not accepting the partition.
No, they refused.
They refused. They thought that they can throw us to the sea, into the sea.
And Yehuda, when did you join the army?
In 1952.
Wow.
But before that, we had training as youth. The youth contingents, Gadna, Gdudei Noah. And there was such a shortage of weapons to teach us that we started to learn to shoot with the air rifles. The air rifles with the small bullets, and also we learned the Arabs did use it when they didn't have arms. Nabut, it's called in Arabic. It's a very heavy stick. And we learn to defend yourself like that and to hit back with sticks.
And Yehuda, what did you do after you matriculated, after you finished school?
You see, at that time, although my father practices as in Kupat Cholim as a doctor, salaries were very low. And so I had to work during the day. And I studied economics in the evening in the University of Tel Aviv. It wasn't easy because I had to go by bus from the place I worked as a clerk from one end of the city to the other. And we started at 6, at 10 o'clock we finished at night, and I had to go home. It wasn't easy, but this was life. This was life. I'm telling this even to my daughters. To my grandchildren, they think that I'm from another planet.
Wow.
Now the kids. But there was idealism. Of course, there were a few rich people, but most people were economically on the same level, more or less.
And you remember very well 1967? The Six-Day War before the
Yeah,
67,
yes.
When
I remember that. That was a miracle because
people thought this was the end.
We thought it's the end. I mean, even General Dayan said that is the destruction of the third temple, of the third Churban of the third house, Churban Bait. Yeah, even Dayan, because it looked very bad. They had all the Russian armaments, the Russian T-62 tanks, and that was the Air Force did it because it was very clever to start a preemptive strike, and we caught most of their airplanes on the ground. And once you controlled the air, you could then knock out the tanks.
And can we mention on video what you did in the army?
Yes. I was in, you see, because I'm healthy, but I'm not And my hobby was photography. So I was in the interpretation of aerial photographs, or what they mean, in the intelligence. And I did it during my 3 years of service, and then as a reservist. It was interesting. It was interesting. You have to interpret it, what you see in the photo. Is it a gun site? Is it nothing? Is it a store? Is it a bombing store? Whatever. Yeah.
So Yehuda, it's really been such an honor and a privilege to sit and to know you, somebody who's actually witnessed, I mean, you lived through, although you were in Israel, thank God, and you weren't in Germany, but you were saved from the total destruction of European Jewry during the Holocaust. You saw the British here in Palestine,
Right.
the partition plan that never came into being, but then you saw the War of Independence.
And 3 wars.
And you saw, and you fought in the wars, and you saw the establishment of the State of Israel. I mean, you have seen the most momentous, you have lived through the most momentous times in Jewish history.
Right.
It's you
Modern Jewish history.
more than world history as well.
Yeah, modern world history as well. Yeah.
So it really is. It's been a tremendous honor and a privilege to speak to you and to
No
hear
problem.
your.
I don't feel like that, but
To hear your incredible and amazing story, really, that is such an inspiration to all of us. Yehuda, you should just be blessed with and may stream till 120 of years of health, happiness that you really deserve. And I just want to mention your parents did the right decision. Thank God, by coming here today. They look, you have a family here, you've got grandchildren.
right.
And thank God your father and your mother had the initiative and had the wisdom to listen to the advice of
Right.
your
Yeah.
father's patient through the SS and to leave. And they established a home here in Israel, although it was very difficult. And look at the results. They'd be very proud of you and your achievements, as we all are. So we just wish you all of Hashem's blessings, all of God's blessings, and
Thanks
to be
very much.
healthy and happy and have nachat and just mazel and bracha always.
Well, it was nice talking to you, and I really appreciate it. Are you going to make a CD out?